Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the program. I'm Jennifer Skolnick, co-chair of the Family Law section of the Beverly Hills Bar. We are here to focus on your well-being today. So sometime today, or actually it's time right now for some you time. So our program is called Reducing Stress in the Practice of Family Law under the Trauma of COVID-19. As family law practitioners, we know a bit about stress. Research has shown that lawyers in general are some of the most stressed out professionals on the planet. A 2016 ABA study of 13,000 lawyers revealed that we have a higher incidence of problem drinking, depression, anxiety, and stress than the general population. As family lawyers, we're not just lawyers. We work on high conflict, high stakes issues that have big impact on very personal aspects of our clients' lives. Our clients are under a lot of stress, and oftentimes it is our job to obtain evidence and hear firsthand accounts of their trauma. We also often face extreme hostility from our opposing counsel, as incivility among professionals in our practice is high, and we work in a legal system that is overburdened and often slow to justice. Now with COVID-19, things are more confusing and stressful for our clients, and we have substantially lost one of our biggest weapons, which is our ability to get judicial relief. COVID-19 has also posed extreme financial challenges for us and our clients, and we have no idea how long those will last. It is now more important than ever that we understand the stress we are under and take steps to take care of ourselves, both physically and mentally, so that we can be the best we can both in and out of the courtroom. Today, we're going to treat you to the insights of 3 leaders in the practices of law, mental health, and wellness. We are going to discuss how COVID-19 has made family law more challenging and learn ways, including mindfulness and meditation, that practitioners can improve their well-being so that they can continue to serve crucial functions for their clients. We will close our session with a guided meditation. Although we can't see or hear you, you can ask questions in the question and answer box on your window, and we'll do the best we can to get to as many questions as possible. So I'd like to introduce our panel. We do have Judge Lewis, who is going to be participating today, but he hasn't popped in yet. But I'll go ahead and introduce him. He was the supervising judge, assistant supervising judge, and family law judge of the Los Angeles Superior Court Family Law Division. Prior to that, he practiced family law for over 25 years and is currently a mediator, arbitrator, and judge pro tem at Signature Resolution. We also have Dr. Susan Rempel. She's a licensed family therapist who is a child custody evaluator, parenting plan coordinator, and mediator. And finally, we have Agulu Singh, who is a corporate real estate attorney who regularly teaches mindfulness classes and groups at Insight LA and Spirit Rock Meditation Center, and has taught at USC and UCLA Law School. Welcome, Judge Lewis, who made it.
Sorry, I was a moment late. I was just finishing up another conference call.
Well, yes, we understand that. Thank you for coming in. And perfect timing, actually. So we're ready to hop in and ask you some questions about practicing law under our current crisis. Now, you practice family law during other crises, such as the Northridge earthquake and 9/11. How do you see that COVID-19 compares to those crises in the practice of family law?
Well, I think that our biggest challenge right now is whether we're going to live what Winston Churchill said. What he said was this: when you're going through hell, keep going. And that's the biggest challenge for all of us right now, is letting fear run how we look at the world. And so it has to start on the inside, in my opinion. If you are always looking for the dark side, this is a great time in your life because there's plenty of darkness out there. If you are going to be, I think we need to be two things. We need to be courageous and we need to be careful. So when I practiced through the Northridge earthquake, through the recession in the late 80s, and through 9/11, a couple of things became very apparent. The first is that the business does pick up again. And that's an important thing for all of us to remember. In talking with someone else today, they were complaining about, how bad things are. And of course they are bad. If you don't notice they're bad, just look at how much Netflix you're watching. I said then, and I say now, this is my key point. It is not going to be an income issue for us. It's going to be a cash flow issue. That's the way we need to look at this. We're going to go through a huge time of cash flow difficulty. And whether you're a large firm lawyer or a small firm lawyer, it doesn't really matter. The only difference between the bigger firms and the smaller firms is that the bigger firms have more overhead to worry about. And they may be the ones that suffer too. So what happened during those 3 times really was that first, things slowed down for a period of time. So if you're expecting to see new clients in the middle class zone, if you will, it's pretty unlikely that's going to happen. But here's what is happening and didn't happen in any of those other crises. Everybody's stuck under the same roof. So a weak marriage is not going to get stronger because everybody's under the same house. And the tension of finances and hopefully not DV, although we're seeing, as we could easily predict, that DV was going to go up for a lot of different reasons, sadly. So I think the first thing we have to do is convince ourselves that we're going to go forward and we're going to carry it forward. The second thing that I think is very important for us as leaders, because we are leaders, we need to give a practical assessment to our clients and help them, because we'll help ourselves, to say, we're going through hell, but we're going to keep going. And so it really does start with our own way of looking at the world. If we are the lioness that has the little cloud over our head all the time, we're going to get swallowed by that. If we are courageous, if we give our clients hope, if we look for innovative ways of doing things, such as this conference, this video conference, we can actually come out stronger and better. And that's how I'm looking forward. I'm not going to allow myself to give in. Am I tempted to? Oh, heck yeah. There's a great movie scene where they show the character who's kind of not the strong, superhero person saying to the superhero person, well, gosh, I'm so admire you because you're not afraid. And he turned around and looked at the other character and said, what, are you kidding? I'm absolutely afraid. I'm just not going to be captured by my fear. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to anticipate that 3 months from now, roughly plus or minus, 3 months from the lifting of the stay-at-home prescriptions, that would be my period. So if stay-at-home is essentially lifted by, say, June 1st, it's going to be until September that we really see the resurgence of newer cases coming in. That's my prediction. I could be wrong, of course. I'm only going based on history. So that time is coming. Having a plan for what we're going to do and how we're going to service our clients is something that I think we just need to be working on. So, for instance, using Zoom technology for in the private judging world, just because that's the world I live in now. When all of this first started, the idea of, oh, well, let's Zoom. Oh, well, let's just wait until things get better and we can all meet. That's not going to be anytime soon. So I think there's going to be a cultural shift that's a good one for us. I think we're all going to be forced to look at other tools such as Zoom conferencing, even into next year, because not to be, Tommy the Downer, but the likelihood that we're going to have problems roll around next fall or this coming fall, November, flu season. That's what happened with the Spanish flu. It resurged. And it, by the way, started in Kansas, is what somebody told me, which I thought was kind of a cute line. So I say stay positive internally, and then look for how you can communicate that to clients, not in an unrealistic way, but in just, we're going to get through this, and we will get through this as a community of family law lawyers. And I think the bigger problem is going to be as we move forward. I'll give you an example. When the Whittier Narrows earthquake happened, and this was in the 90s, I want to say, I was at the Mosque Courthouse that day. At the time, I think it was called the Hungry Tiger, which is where Kendall's is today, or may have been called Rothschild's. And I was sitting in there, and all of a sudden things started to shake, and I went outside, and things were really shaking. And they called the calendar for Department 2 in the Grand Park. And they called everybody over there, and they told them what was going to happen. And everybody rose to the occasion. And that's what the second thing that we need to do, is to rise to the occasion. And I believe that we can do that, even if we have to just keep convincing ourselves. And then I think as well, this is a time where there's an intersection between practical need and the need for greater civility, because everyone's under the same amount of pressure, and some people are better with pressure than others. Some people falter with pressure. And so we've got to be aware that we're going to see a lot of that amongst our colleagues, the other side, getting more and more stressed out. This is a time when the vicarious trauma of the work that we do is going to be elevated because of our own personal trauma. If you think of it as a cup of poison, there's only so much of this trauma that any of us can drink in any one given day. Well, now we've got our own half a cup full, if you will, let alone our client. So we've got to take care of ourselves, be positive, and have realistic plans on how we're going to deal with each other and extend to one another greater professionalism than we're frankly used to in the family law community. Those are the ways that I think we make it through this extremely difficult time.
And when we have opposing counsel that is being very hostile towards us or is not working on trying to resolve issues outside of court, how do we deal with that? How do we encourage them to communicate in a different way that is more resolution focused and collaborative when we can't go to court? That's not an option.
Well, I think there's a couple of things that are available to us. The first one is that I think that we can look forward to the following fact. It goes to the old joke. There's only one lawyer in town, and he's poor. Another lawyer moves into town, and now they're both wealthy. We need each other. I need to be able to talk to Jennifer. I need to be able to communicate with you. We need to learn to be more flexible. And the ones that are going to find that delay is their ally, because delay is always the ally of someone on one side of the case or the other. If it's the criminal defendant, delay is the criminal defendant's ally, because the criminal defendant can go ahead and say, well, I want the trial to go out into the future. If it's in the civil arena, the defendant has the money, the plaintiff wants the money, the defendant can string the plaintiff out.
In family law, it's the one with the custody, the one with the money the one with the information that has
Right.
the upper hand and the reason to want to delay. So
Right.
how do you, when you represent
But
the
the
out
good news
spouse?
is,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. So the good news, here's the good news. In most of our cases, most of them now, and all the political, let's be kumbaya and politically correct, all of that's in there. But here's the real world. Usually one parent has control of the kids and the other parent has control of the money. And it's less frequent that one parent has control of the money and of the kids. Just a practical reality of life. So those two people need each other. They need each other. So delay is the ally, can be, of both sides in the family law arena in most of our cases. So that's how I think we have to focus on it. I'll give you an example. In scheduling things for my calendar, as we've been moving them forward, as we began to move them forward into the future, into May and June, there was some initial resistance to the idea of, oh, well, let's do it by Zoom. Here's my prediction. In the next couple of weeks, that resistance is going to start to go down because people need to stay busy. They've got to have billable hours to keep the practice going. And so I think that I'll give you a good example from the Northridge earthquake. So on the street I lived on at the time, we lived on the cut side of the hill and other homes on the fill side. And being raised by a real estate guy, my dad said, always buy on the cut side, never buy on the fill side. So we did. And there was no way neighbors were going to go into our backyard unless invited. But the Northridge earthquake comes and there was no water where we lived for about 4 days. So we just let all our neighbors know, you know what? Go take a bucket and fill the bucket and use that to flush your toilet, and you can take it out of our swimming pool because we got plenty of water in there. We adapt, and that's what I think we need to do, is to learn to be more adaptable. As lawyers, by the way, generally speaking, we're not the most adaptable group. We tend to get fixed in our little linear way, which is what our great strength is, to move forward on a linear basis. So I think I've tried to answer your question.
Yes, well, great. And may I ask you a personal question?
Well, you can ask me. I don't know that I'll answer
How do you practice self-care, Judge Lewis? Do you have any advice on that, working in the family law field for all these years?
Well, I get afraid. I think being willing to admit that you're afraid and that you're worried and that you don't know what's next is way healthier than living in the denial of it and acting like it isn't really there. It's, I think that we're going to hear later about mindfulness. Mindfulness doesn't mean you change the way you think or you feel, but you do become more aware of what it is and then measure how you're going to allow that to influence you. In other words, noting it, if you will. I think that's a phrase I've heard in other settings, that you note the feeling. You don't become possessed by it, but you recognize that it's there. So, it's just about, here's what makes me strong, trying to tell you that you need to be strong. That helps make me strong. And I think that's what we need to be communicating.
Well, that's very inspiring, and thank you for your words of wisdom and strength here during this time. So, all right, well, why don't we go into the next part of our discussion, which has to do with how stress affects us. And we'll turn to Dr. Rempel to talk a bit about how does stress impact the mind and the body.
Okay. Well, as you know, because we're all in a field with people who are under stress, you can have physical reactions, physical symptoms such as headache, chest pain, muscle tension, upset stomach, sleep issues. You can also have behavioral symptoms, anxiety, lack of focus, changes in your appetite. And I think right now we're prone to the psychological symptoms associated with stress: anger, feeling overwhelmed, depression, hopelessness, all of those.
Do you think that COVID-19 has affected us maybe somewhat differently than other types of stress? Or
Oh
has it a
gosh, yes.
certain impact in particular?
I was thinking yesterday, we can feel claustrophobic and at the same time feel agoraphobic. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But you can also feel isolated, disconnected, unmotivated, and you are most likely experiencing vicarious trauma from working with clients who themselves are poorly managing the stress or attempting to take advantage of the situation. I was reading in the New York Times yesterday that the Google query, "Why am I having such weird dreams lately?" has quadrupled in the US in the past week. It's amazing. And as attorneys, you're trained that any sign of emotion or stress or whatever is a sign of weakness. And I agree with Judge Lewis completely. I think it's imperative that from time to time you give yourself permission to allow yourself to acknowledge that maybe you are overwhelmed, maybe you are stressed, maybe you are worried, maybe you're unsure about the future. Yeah, I think we're all in the same boat with that.
Is there any way that we can measure how much additional stress we're under now due to COVID-19?
Well, yes, there are a number of measures, but one that's easy to use and simple that is appearing on your screen now is the Holmes-Rahe Life-Stress Inventory. And if you look down the list, there are 43 life events, which can be stressful in a good way, like going on vacation, and in a bad way, like the death of a loved one or a spouse within the past year. So you go through and you check the boxes, which ones apply to you. And I went through and I highlighted all the ones that are possibility just because of what we're going through.
Is that all the yellow we're seeing?
All the yellow that you're seeing.
That is all potentially COVID-19 related?
Yes. So there are only 8 events on that list that really don't apply or really are unlikely to occur, such as going on a vacation. And if you add up all of the points combined, there are 2,639 possible points. Now, when they developed this tool, they said that if you had over 300 points, you were 80%. There was an 80% likelihood that within the next 2 years, you would develop some kind of a stress-related illness. So if you add up all of the items that are highlighted in yellow, it totals up to 2,359 points. So I think, personally, we're going to see a huge increase in stress-induced health issues for years to come because of this.
Wow. Really, all aspects of our lives, it really affects. You can see.
Especially, I think, if there's a resurgence, as Judge Lewis was noting, I think we're going to have to deal with more and more stress as just normative.
The longer time we are, subject to it, the more likely we're going to be impacted by these different stressors. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the thing about this situation. It's just going on. We see no end in sight. It appears, right. At this point,
leading to feelings of hopelessness, really.
Now, for many of us, COVID-19 has forced us to change how we do work, and it's forced us to change our work environment. How can we be productive and maintain our sanity while working from home?
Well, I think you start by checking your mindset. It's, as Judge Lewis was saying, it's very easy to think about worst case scenarios. And if you sit and watch the news all day, it's just nothing but negative, negative, negative. So if you are finding yourself in a negative space, you have to tell yourself to knock it off. We like to call it thought stopping, but you're really telling yourself to knock it off. And in place of that, you need to have a neutral or a positive mantra. I've told clients for years that if they're in a negative space, go in and write with a Sharpie on a whiteboard or lipstick on a mirror, something that you want to say to yourself over and over and over, such as, I will only focus on what I can control, and then do that. because if you focus on worst case scenarios endlessly, what you end up doing is draining your energy, disrupting your patterns, eating and sleeping. I also think it's important to have a distinct space to work in, and it's best if it's separate from the rest of your family. I've heard of CEOs working in their SUVs. I suggest trying to have a workspace near a window so you don't feel like you're just stuck in a box. And if you have children, and there's another adult in the house, of course, consider doing something like getting yourself some noise-canceling headphones so you really feel like you're in a different space.
I find it with me, it's kind of challenging to work with my animals running around and barking and my cat coming on my keyboard, and keeping my space separate from them can be difficult at times.
We have a lot of noise in our house, and these noise-canceling headphones with a good mic are a cheap investment. Get them on Amazon. They'll be there in a couple of days, and if you buy an expensive one, it's like $80. So I just think that background noise, like you said, whether it's the barking dog or the whining child, or the barking dog barking because of the whining child, the kind of twofer.
But
it's
of
a good
course,
thing.
the noise canceling doesn't cancel it out if you're on Zoom and you're trying to have other people hear you, right?
But the dedicated mic definitely makes your voice project more than the background noise.
Okay, good to know.
Great tip. Then I think you have to toss out the idea that started when all of us first started at home. I saw endless emails about having daytime pajamas and nighttime pajamas. I think that's all wrong. I think you have to try and stick to some kind of a schedule. Maybe it's not exactly your normal schedule, but you need to get up same time every morning. You need to maintain your eating patterns. You need to exercise at the same time every day. And if you find yourself running out of work, instead of focusing on that, look at it as an opportunity to get ahead on your CE. Or if I can put in a personal plug, I'm a member of the AFCC California Chapter Newsletter Committee. We're always looking for articles. So if you happen to find yourself with nothing to do, write something. Then I think another thing you can do is maintain your routines as much as possible, as I was saying before. But within those routines, while you're going through your workday, I think you need to give yourself a bit of a break from time to time, whether you're doing guided breathing or meditation, or it's something just so you take yourself out of the space that you're in, if you can. Then I think it's important to maintain both work connections and social connections. Social connections probably make more sense intuitively, but think of it, we don't have the opportunity to pass by one another in the hall right now. And so it's important for you to reach out to people, eat lunch with someone via Zoom, check in from time to time. Don't just focus on your own self in your own space. And it's also important to not sit. I'm sitting on a couch right now. I have to force myself at regular intervals to get up and do some stretching and moving about, do things that I know will do to help relieve my ongoing stress, because every single client that I have as a therapist right now has the conflict in those situations has escalated dramatically. And then finally, I think it's very hard, but I think it's important to try and keep your sense of humor. And I would encourage you all to go on YouTube and search for a video called Quarantine. I watched it a few weeks ago, and nice woman starts playing a beautiful melody, and all of a sudden she just starts screaming. And it's, it's humor for our silent times, right?
Yeah. Spontaneous breakdown.
Yeah.
Well, how so our clients are under stress, our opposing counsel are under stress. How can we effectively communicate with these people, with our clients, for instance, who might not be so receptive to listening at this time?
Well, I think you have to have a pattern for yourself and for your clients. You have to have a pattern of a schedule of reaching out. If you don't hear from someone, or if there's new information about status of court access, pick up the phone, send an email, and then when you're communicating with them, I think it's probably important to make sure you have some telephonic communication with most of your clients. Listen. I think many of us have gotten into the pattern over the course of our lives of the other person is speaking and we're already formulating our response. So at this time when there's so much stress, I think it's important to really listen to what the clients are telling you and to think about the specific stressors in their life in addition to what we're all experiencing now. And I think it's important to remember that many of our clients have personality traits and characteristics, and all of those are going to intensify because of the stress. And finally, I think that it's very helpful if you can manage the client's expectations. I was talking to someone yesterday who was telling me that they had a hearing in September and then it would all get settled, and I said, I think you need to speak with your attorney about when your hearing may or may not be happening, because I don't think it's going to occur on September 2nd.
What is active listening exactly, and how can that be used to help our clients?
Active listening is it's a practice of both listening, really listening again, really listening to what the client has to say, but then in addition to hearing the complete message that's being communicated to you, which is why Zoom is so incredible, it allows you to see the person, see their body language that they're passing to you, listen to their tone, and it's about, again, really listening, being fully present, not formulating your answers ahead of time, and to get into the pattern of reflecting back. So you think this, or so you're worried about this, or whatever. Reflect back what they're telling you and the emotion. Be a little bit of a therapist yourself. I think you already all have a toolbox already. Reflect back their emotions as well. You sound very stressed today, or I think I hear the emotion in your voice. And try to, this is I think the really hardest part about active listening, is not formulate a judgment. Just listen, just be present, just reflect back so they feel that you're connected to them.
What about opposing counsel? How do we deal with hostile opposing counsel?
I think it's more or less the same thing that you tell your clients. Stay focused on the issue at hand. Don't allow things to broaden to the entire matter. Focus on the particular issue right at hand. And I think the most powerful thing, as Judge Lewis was talking about civility, is think about your tone. Think about, tone is such a powerful steering mechanism in a conversation. So it's both in what you say in a conversation, but also in what you write. So try and remove the emotion out of the communication. Try and look for opportunities, make suggestions about how to de-escalate the situation. Acknowledge, do a little of that active listening, acknowledge what is being said, and try and understand it from the speaker's point of view. And I know that's very difficult because you have your client beside you with his or her own view of the world, but try and understand it, try and take the role of the other and understand things from the speaker's point of view, and try and I know this is hard sometimes too, but try and treat the other person with the respect and dignity that you would like to have. And if you're able to resolve things, demonstrate gratitude, thank the other person for reaching a response, and if you continue to disagree about something, agree at least the disagreement should be respectful as possible.
Good to keep in mind. Easier to say and harder to do sometimes.
Oh, I didn't say it was easy.
So finally, what is well-being, and how can we work on improving it?
Well, Webster's dictionary defines well-being as the state of being happy, healthy, or prosperous. So it's basically the antithesis of what we're experiencing now. I think you start by finding something positive in each and every day. Looked out the window in the morning, this morning. Not quite as good as my screen background, but it's a bright sunny morning out. Good. Start there, and then hold on to whatever it is that's positive. I would also refer everyone, after the study that you mentioned initially, Jennifer, about lawyers experiencing so much depression and anxiety.
Right.
A national task force was developed at the ABA meeting in 2016, and out of that was produced the National Task Force on Lawyer Wellbeing report. And in that report, it had 6 spheres, if you will, 6 different areas in which you can work to improve your well-being. And they are, excuse me, they are occupational, cultivating some kind of personal satisfaction in your practice, something that you find particularly rewarding. Another sphere is the intellectual, engaging in continuous learning. We can't be complacent. If you don't have work to do, as I said, try and expand your knowledge base in another area. And it doesn't have to be in the law. If you've always wanted to learn a foreign language, maybe this is the time to practice it. Another sphere is the spiritual sphere, developing a sense of meaningfulness and purpose in all the areas of your life, not just in your work life, but in your home life as well.
Yeah,
Then
I mean, looking into this and researching, I was very surprised that this lawyer well-being is actually a movement now, which kind of sprang from that ABA study that we talked about earlier. And that, you know, there was that task force that was formed, and then the report that came out of it that defines well-being as being multidimensional. You know, well-being is not just an absence of stress or just being happy. It's a continuous process affecting various aspects of our whole being, our lives. And you know, and what's really cool is, you know, looking at the materials that have been generated for lawyer well-being as a result of all this. There's that report that we mentioned, that was done by the National Task Force on Lawyer Wellbeing, and there's also another document called a Wellbeing Toolkit for Lawyers and Legal Employers, which was published in August 2018. I encourage everybody to look at that. I was really quite pleased by what was put together. It contains well-being action plans, and with ideas and activities and events for legal employers to put together for their employees. And then there's an activity workbook with 17 well-being worksheets for individual attorneys to work on. And this is all online for free. If you Google, you know, well-being toolkit for lawyers and legal employers, you should be able to find it pretty easily. But that
and what a great thing to be working on now.
Yes, that's right. When you feel a bit somber by all of this sequestering, you know, pop open the toolkit, pop open the workbook, and check out one of the worksheets. They cover topics such as happiness, mindfulness, gratitude, kindness, emotional intelligence, physical activity, leadership. All kinds of interesting things are covered. But that's almost like an instant box of happiness right there if you focus on that, you know. Well, I think with that, I think we should probably jump into the mindfulness part of our presentation with Mr. Singh. Tell us a little bit about what is mindfulness and what
Jennifer,
are the benefits.
Before we go there, could I just make a really quick observation?
Yes.
The one thing that we haven't touched on, maybe you guys got to it in the first couple minutes before I was able to join. I think we all need to be asking ourselves, who are the safe people in my life that I can actually talk with about what's going on and how it is that I'm processing? And, you know, the idea that family law lawyers are going to wear their emotional health on their shoulders is pretty unlikely. But that doesn't mean we can't have safe people in our life that we can actually speak with about this. And it could be colleagues, it could be friends. Who's your safe person? And I know I have a
couple of people that are my safe people, including, of course, my wonderful wife, but other friends too. And sharing and being willing to be open in a safe environment, of course, it has to be safe. But that's something that I think has helped me in these last few weeks of isolation. There's two guys I get on Zoom with every week, and we just check in on how are we doing.
That's great.
So safe people in our life, I think, is an important thing. Can't be overstated.
That's great. That's an excellent point, Judge Lewis. Thank you for bringing that up. And before we jump into the mindfulness, I just also want to point out too that, well-being, you can think of it in terms of, maintaining our sanity, but it's also actually an ethical duty for attorney competence and competence. And it's actually baked right into our rules of professional conduct. The definition of competence under the California rules, attorney competence includes mental, emotional, and physical ability reasonably necessary for the performance of the service. So think about that. I mean, we owe it not only to ourselves, but to our clients as well. We're performing such important work for them, and we owe it to, to be able to do the best we can. It comes from taking care of ourselves, number one. Very, very, very important. So, all right, so let's go back to the mindfulness part. What is mindfulness?
So yeah, I'm excited to talk with you all a little bit about mindfulness and even more importantly, do a mindfulness meditation practice. And, the jury is pretty much out on the efficacy of mindfulness meditation to relieve stress and actually improve a whole range of outcomes. I've been practicing meditation for about 30 years, and the only drawback that I found thus far is that you actually have to do the practice to get some benefit out of it, which is no small thing. So I'm glad we have this time together to do that. Mindfulness, in a nutshell, is a way of, mindfulness meditation, I should say, is a way of training the attention. That we will train the attention to focus on particular elements of the experience. When we talk about stress reduction, one of the things that stresses us out a lot, especially as lawyers who are generally intellectual people, we often kind of reside in this little sort of box around our head and our mentality, and we're creative thinkers, and we're trained to see worst case scenarios, as Judge Lewis was pointing out. And so one of the ways that mindfulness meditation is helpful is to redirect the attention away from being caught in and obsessed with and kind of ruminating about all the, legitimate thoughts that we have. There are problems to be solved and plans to be made and contingencies to be considered, but it's really helpful because all that is activating to the body. It creates that stress response. We saw the image earlier in the presentation of all the negative health effects of the stress response. And so in a way, what we do when we practice mindfulness meditation, we sometimes call it secluding the mind. So we'll bring the mind to a more gross experience of the body. We'll do a meditation using the breath in the body and letting that activity of the mind just kind of be there. It's very difficult to actually stop your thinking. This is one of the myths of mindful meditation. I get people telling me all the time, I can't meditate because my mind just races. And that's a misunderstanding of the process that we're doing. The mind may continue to race. And of course, the mind likes to wander. That's what our minds do. If our minds weren't wandering and occasionally scanning the horizon for danger, we probably wouldn't have survived the perils of the jungle. So this is actually quite fine and quite normal. And our practice, in essence, will be, and I'll guide it fairly heavily. You can just follow my direction. Our practice will essentially be to bring attention into the body And then when we notice, and it might be a breath, it might be 2 breaths, it might be half a breath, that the mind will be, oh, what's going to happen about this, or what's going to happen about that we get caught in our thoughts. The moment that you realize that that's happened is actually a very sort of mysterious, precious moment. We call it like a little awakening. Oh, I'm caught in my thoughts, or I'm, preoccupied with this anxious feeling in my chest, that we just can acknowledge that. I think Judge Lewis mentioned this also, like just to notice, thinking is happening, planning is happening. Sometimes helpful to drop that little mental note, planning, worrying, remembering, daydreaming, and then we'll just return to the present moment experience. And another way that I think is helpful to think about this is a little bit like, I'll give you 2 analogies. One is if you're running on a treadmill, the body will go into hyperactivation. So the pulse rate increases, the blood pressure increases, the respiration rate increases, the heartbeat increases. This is all to get you through the process of running. It's a very adaptive process. When you step off of the treadmill, without doing anything, the body finds its own equilibrium. It takes a little bit of time. So when you jump off the treadmill, you will feel your heart still pounding. But over time, the body seeks its own equilibrium. And actually, the mind is very much the same way. So when the mind is constantly stimulated, as most of our minds are in this moment, this meditation practice is kind of stepping off the treadmill. We'll become less engaged with our thoughts, and that will allow some space for them to settle down. And the other analogy that I really like is that of a snow globe. So most of you probably have seen these little tchotchkes. This is a little container with some liquid and little specks of glitter, and you shake it up, and then there's a swirl of activity in this little globe. And our daily lives are often like this. COVID-19 just puts all of this on steroids. That we're going around and we're in this little container that is swirling with activity. And so one of the things we'll do as we practice meditation is we'll put the snow globe down, and then over time, the snow, the activity in the globe will settle naturally of its own accord. And I especially like this analogy because there's really nothing you can do in terms of manipulating the snow globe to cause the glitter to settle. It's actually, we have to have a kind of confidence in this natural ability that we all have to find equilibrium. And in fact, when you use the snow globe as the analogy, any attempts to manipulate the globe in something that, oh, maybe this will help it settle faster, actually creates more agitation. And so meditation is quite simple. The practice, we aspire for the practice to have a sense of restfulness about it, that we're not really trying to make anything happen as much as we're just redirecting the attention and then redirecting the attention and then redirecting the attention. We might have to do this dozens, hundreds, thousands of times in a meditation period. But each time we redirect the attention, we're creating a little space for this natural settling. And each time we redirect the attention, we're strengthening our ability to more and more redirect the attention to where it's useful.
How long does it take to get good at this?
I mean, it is
very
very
a lot of time.
It is very much a skill, like persuasive writing or any of the skills that we acquire in our law practice. That being said, I teach mindfulness-based stress reduction, and that course has been replicated tens of thousands of times and been heavily studied. And what the research shows is that with about 8 weeks of daily meditation practice, that your brain actually, the structural, and this is quite mysterious, the structural anatomy of the brain reconfigures itself.
That's amazing.
in way, we think of the brain as being like hardware, that's static, but in fact it's very dynamic, and it reconfigures itself in measurable ways that improve your resistance to stress. So
The amygdala.
the amygdala is the part of the brain that senses danger, and it becomes more adept at tolerating higher levels of stress before we go into that stress response that causes all the negative side effects. And this is really important, it increases our resiliency so that we do get stressed out, happens to all of us, that we are able to come back to normal much more quickly.
Wow, 8 weeks, that sounds
not
pretty doable.
in the span of a lifetime. It's really not that much time, and I suspect from having teaching it anecdotally, we start seeing changes in the second week of people doing a daily practice. And that being said,
what you're saying is there's no magic bullet, and you got to actually do the work, just like everything else in life.
Exactly.
You can't just suddenly decide, oh, I'm going to be less stressed, and it happens that way. It takes work.
Exactly.
But we do happen to have a lot of free time on our hands right now, so.
Yeah. Well, like 8 weeks, are we talking about 5 minutes a day, or are we talking about an hour a day?
Well, you're talking to someone who my perspective is a little bit skewed, because this is my passion, and my friend was calling it my side hustle, is teaching meditation. I think it's a little bit like, I like to compare it to exercise. If you worked out 5 minutes, you probably would have some moderate improvement in your fitness. But if you really want to be in shape, it's going to require more. I think if you really were committed to wanting to have a much less stressful life, 15 to 30 minutes is a good starting point. And I'll be happy to share with the whole group a number of guided meditations that I have. They're posted online, and you're welcome to use those freely if that's supportive. And it's often quite helpful when you're starting to have like a guided meditation that you can listen to. There's also many apps.
Can you lead us through a guided meditation
now
online?
Yeah,
Does that work this way? Can we do it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Do I have to sit a certain way, or what do I do?
So I encourage you just to find a position where you are that is comfortable. It is somewhat supportive if the body can be upright, to kind of create a sense of alertness, and also have the body have a sense of settledness. So maybe you can feel the connection to the floor or to your chair or whatever you're seated on. And I like to begin by just encouraging each of you to take a few more intentionally deep breaths. And on the exhale of the breath, just inviting the body to settle. We can't hear the participants, but often when we can, I actually encourage people on the exhale to make a kind of a sigh, which calms the nervous system. So it might be something like, you do that a few times. And then bringing the attention inward, you can close your eyes if that's comfortable, or you can just soften your gaze. So you're not looking at anything particular and your eyes aren't wandering around. One of the things that supports our ability to meditate is when the body is relaxed. So maybe seeing if you can just invite the forehead to soften. Be raising and lowering the eyebrows a couple of times. Sensing into the space around the eyes and the eyes themselves. Just inviting the eyes to soften, to settle back into their sockets. Noticing if the jaw is clenched and unclenching it. Bringing the attention to the back of the neck, where many of us hold a lot of tension. And it can be helpful to use the exhale breath as you exhale, this sense of softening, some sense of easing, releasing as much as is possible in this moment. Allowing the shoulders to settle downward and back even a fraction of an inch, which creates a sense of opening in the chest. And softening the chest, softening the belly. And then if you're able to sit upright, allowing the structures of the spine to support your body so that the muscles in the back can soften all the way from the shoulders to the tailbone. And then you might let the attention scan through the legs, softening the hips, the upper leg. And softening the knees, the calves, the shin. Softening the ankle. And then the feet. And feeling the connection between your feet and the floor, your feet in the chair. Sensing into the fact that in some sense the earth is always supporting us. And now just shifting the attention to notice that the body is breathing. And that we can directly connect with the sensation of breathing because we can feel the flow of breath as it moves through the body. So this is not a conceptual practice or visualization, but actually directly feeling the movements of the breath through the body. So you might notice the rise and fall of the belly. And you might notice the rise and fall of the chest. And so in a sense, we're filling this sphere of awareness, this field of awareness, with these sensations of the breath moving through the body. And letting everything else just rest in the background. The thoughts, the worries, the emotions, just fading a little bit into the background, so the primacy of the experience is this flow of sensations as the breath moves through the body. And you might notice air at the nose and the upper lip. And then each time the attention wanders from the breath, this is not a problem. You could gently acknowledge the experience that put you away, pulled you away, planning, remembering, worrying, daydreaming. Just a gentle, kind of non-judgmental note. And then gently redirecting the attention back to the feeling of the breath as it moves through the body. Letting, as best you can, the body breathe itself. Letting the quality of the effort be gentle, patient, relaxed, not trying to make anything happen. Just connecting with the feeling of the breath as it moves through the body. And for these moments of practice, there's nowhere you have to go, nothing you have to get or get rid of, no one you have to be or become. Just this sense of restful attention on the breath, the simple activity of breathing. And then again, each time the attention wanders, it's not a problem. Just begin again. This process of connecting and reconnecting with our breath over and over again. This is the heart of the meditation practice. And as we continue to settle, we might connect with the more subtle aspects of the breath. Perhaps you can feel some gentle rise and fall in the shoulders. Perhaps you can sense the movement of the rib cage, expanding and contracting. Perhaps you can feel the breath in the lower back. If there's some particular strong sensation in the body or emotion in the body that keeps pulling you away from the breath, you might include that sensation, that part of the body in the meditation, some sense of breathing with that experience, breathing through that experience, as if the breath were stroking or massaging that experience. And then letting the practice be simple, breathing in, knowing that you're breathing in. When breathing out, knowing that you're breathing out. And then as we come to the end of our period of meditation, inviting you to try another practice that will help us stay positive and buoy the mind. And this is a practice of gratitude. So bringing to mind some person, some being, could be an animal, or some circumstance in your life, however great or small, for which you have some sense of gratitude. The body that is breathing. And so visualizing this circumstance, if it's a living being, you might sense into what it's like to be in their presence. And then connecting with this sense of gratitude as a feeling in the body. Sensing into the quality of the experience of gratitude, some sense of happiness, joy, well-being, some uplift. Maybe a kind of inner smile. And really taking in the goodness of this experience as a kind of inner nourishment. A temporary salve for whatever might be ailing the mind. And then inviting you to let go of the gratitude practice, let go of anything that seems like a technique or a doing, and just resting. The awareness continues to notice experience, but we can have this sense of not engaging, just seated here quietly, resting. I'm going to ring a bell. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, but when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And I believe we have a little bit of time remaining for some questions, comments, observations.
I'm ready for a nap.
Well, you know, one of the things that meditation often reveals is how exhausted we are.
Yeah. It's nice just to
Sure.
stay still for a while.
Yeah.
And I could definitely get into the groove of that for 8 weeks.
So just a reminder to the participants, there should be a button that says Q&A in your Zoom list of Zoom buttons at the bottom. And that's the place that you can type in a question or a comment. And while we're waiting for people to chime in, you know, if any of my fellow panelists have something they want to add, or
What if you feel like you want to go to sleep?
well, you know, I was only half joking when I said, you know, like I think we are a chronically sleep deprived culture. I mean, the example that is most reveals this is like how many people wake up to the sound of an alarm clock. It's like virtually everyone. And that almost by definition means the amount of sleep that your body wants is being cut short. So this is good information, that when we practice meditation and we connect with our body in a different way, we get insight into things that might be sort of hiding beneath the surface. And so, my encouragement is if you feel sleepy, try to figure out a way to take a nap.
Nothing wrong with naps.
Yeah.
One of the things that we didn't really talk about is what's next in terms of all of the issues that are presently keeping us in lockdown mode. And I think that one of the things that I've been struggling with is that suddenly, once the governor lifts the social stay at home, safer at home, whatnot, that everything is going to be magically better. And it is not going to be magically better. Reintegrating into some form of normalcy in our lives is not going to be an event. It's going to be a process. And one of the things that we're all susceptible to is this concept of pent-up demand. And especially in our industry and now in our world. When I started practicing law, it was a bad day if somebody messengered a letter to you. And then they were faxing you letters, and then you were getting paged, and then you were getting email, and then you were getting email with attachments, and then you're getting texted. And so we live in a culture that has what I call response time anxiety. The expectation that there's going to be an answer and it's going to be quick. And for those of us that are, older baby boomers, and for those of you that are not quite baby boomers, which is, I think, most of us, we've lived in a very privileged world. Our first world problem is my Zoom connection isn't as strong as I want it to be. And so there's going to be a big learning curve for us as we reintegrate into society, and having realistic expectations about how long it's going to take for things to get better. And my struggle is that I think, somewhere there's this date out there, and then suddenly everything is going to be great, and there's going to be no more problems. And that's just not what's going to happen. And communicating that to our clients, it's hard enough to convince ourselves of that, but communicating that to our clients. And then the other thing that I think would be very helpful right now is, there's 140 plus people that participated here. It's a small sliver of our world as family law lawyers. And this is maybe a time to be more mindful about the pressures that others are under, whether it's clients or bench officers or opposing counsel or expert witnesses. Many of us are struggling with the kids are at home, and kids are great, but there's a reason why they go to school and we go to work. And it's great to be around your kids. I'm not saying it isn't great to be around your kids, but let's face it, we could all use a little more, those of us that have the kids at home, a little more time where we're, respite time away from them. So there's that pressure too for families. They're all bunched together, and it isn't just DV that is the consequence of that. It's the internal pressure of kind of like going on vacation. They say when families go on vacation, that things start to percolate up because we're just around each other more than we're used to being around each other. So finding that strength to recognize that others are under a tremendous amount of stress too. The normal human tendency is for us, I think, to say, nobody knows the trouble I've seen. and also I'm coping with it better than you are. Those are two things that we're, very likely to do. Or what lawyers I think are also very good at is denying that there's any aspect of their own personal life that could be influencing the way that they are handling their practice, because we're sort of taught, if you will, to compartmentalize that, put it over here, and not recognize how it's weaving into our lives. So expressing hope and showing patience and kindness to others, that can go a long way too. And it can be very disarming, frankly, when the other person is super uptight and you are more calm. You're more likely to influence them if you take the bait of escalation, if you will. And we lawyers are good at taking the bait of escalation. You say something to me, there's no way I'm going to let you get away with that. I'm going to say something back. And learning how to de-escalate right now in times when pressure is getting higher, and the discipline of de-escalation of conflict. And you touched on this, Jennifer, when you said, realistic expectations, or maybe it was you, Susan.
I have talked about response anxiety. I have someone who has been texting me for the past 10 minutes asking me why I'm not responding. It's a client.
Well, because I'm not as obsessive compulsive as you are. If you're nervous, hit 9 and keep hitting it.
Yeah.
So, but the real world, in terms of what the court response is going to be, the idea that the LA Superior Court, just as an example, is going to somehow open on June 22nd. Remember when we all thought that was pushing it too far out, and how come it was going to be that far out? Now that's looking more and more realistic. But the idea that magic wand is going to, the court's going to open and it's got no problems. Here's the reality. It's going to have 90 days of inventory that got pushed out 90 days. 90 days of response time anxiety about, I want to now file my RFO or make my ex parte application. The idea that things are going to just be better suddenly on July 1st, and that family law is going to somehow get better. I'm not trying to promote hopelessness, but just practicality. It's going to be many months into the future before we really see. It could even be into next year. That's my prediction, that it will be into next year before the court gets to a place where there's more stability in terms of when we can expect hearings to take place, when we can conduct other proceedings that are law related. Using Zoom for as long as we need to, coming to grips, explaining to clients, no, that's just not going to happen. No, I'm sorry, your RFO got continued. It's just what it is. We all are in this together.
Yeah.
Imagine the stress and the anxiety of just going into a packed courthouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Judge Lewis, and also want to just encourage people that I notice that I have this some idea that of waiting, and that when this day comes, everything will be better. And what I'm trying to do is find the ways that things are good now.
Right.
Find moments of joy. People are talking about pets. I have cats, and they come, and petting the cat is a beautiful thing. And those of us that have partners that we can do things together with, my wife and I have been singing, which is just like, wonderful thing to do. It's just sort of an instant hit of all the good joy chemicals, and
Yep.
that we don't have to feel guilty about experiencing moments of joy and well-being, even in the midst of all this, that those things can coexist.
I think we need to search for those, actually, as part of our mental health. We've been watching more comedies here at the Lewis House. So if you haven't seen it in a while, go watch Best in Show again. We laughed like crazy the other night, even though we knew every joke and every line. Laughter is good for the soul.
It really is. Well, with that, I want to thank you so much, panelists. I'm very grateful that you were able to participate and share your ideas and wisdom with us today. It helps us, I think, deal with this time, to hear your insight and ways to better deal with and to take care of ourselves. And so we're going to have the slides will be available. They will be sent by the Beverly Hills Bar to all of the participants. And Gulu, you mentioned that you have some meditation. I guess are they
they're
audio?
linked? Yeah, they're links to audio guided meditations, and I'm happy to. I can send you a link, and that can be shared with the group.
And okay, all right. So yeah, so you can email. So I guess what we could send it through. You could send it to me through my email, which is jennifer@skolnickfamilylaw.com, and just request the links, and I'll be happy to send it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, thank you very much, and thank you, audience, for participating today.
Thanks for being our moderator, Jennifer.
Yes, enjoyed it. Enjoyed the
Great.
topic. Okay.
Okay.
Well, take care.
God bless everybody. Stay well.
Stay well.
well.
Bye.